I went to Brooklyn, so I just north of Betside. Good evening. We have a quorum. And we'll do exactly. Moving to Republic, we have to do the pledge. I'm just trying to follow because I always get it wrong. So please join us as Mr. Spiller leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's get right to the budget workshop.
So this is budget workshop number 4. We are nearing the end of the budget process. So just want to recap where we left off last board meeting. On the 23rd, we had almost about $400,000 shortfall trying to balance the budget out. And as we had stated, we were waiting for April 1st, which was teacher retirements. That's typically when we receive most of them, if any. Final state aid, the state is usually set to adopt their budget by April 1st. Unfortunately, we do not have an on-time budget, so that information has not been received. And we were evaluating these reserves to kind of close this budget gap. We do, though, continue with the property tax cap, remaining at 2.474, appropriating a fund balance, reducing that to $100,000 as per the board goal, using some other reserves to help offset increased costs that we've seen in the budget. We are adding a DCT teacher, social studies teacher, English teacher, increasing some security measures in capital improvements, and working on our Chromebook replacement plan. So all of those things remain in the budget. So here's just a quick cheat sheet of how we balance the budget to come up with our total proposed budget of $47,726,436. In the past 2 weeks, I've been working with our ESCO for Johnson Controls for getting our energy performance contract moving and signing off paperwork, trying to get our rebate in place, which is part of that deal. And I have confirmed with them that we will see that money in the 2023 school year, and that's just strict general fund money, so we're able to book that revenue. We did have funding of our repair reserve in the budget as an expense line. We decided to withdraw that because we do have the capital reserve proposition going forward, and we feel with that proposition, we're talking bond, we do have a healthy reserve and some other improvements that we're able to do within the general fund budget that we could hold off some time on funding that reserve going forward. The capital outlay, at this point, we're planning on the increase of capital outlay of $150,000. We currently have the $100,000 in. If you recall, last time we spoke, the House and the Senate have both approved at least $250,000 for capital outlays. So we are kind of projecting that that should go through. There's no talk that it won't. That is not something that's holding up the budget right now at the state. So for now, we're continuing with that in at this point in time. We did receive some teacher retirements. We have a couple teachers that have handed their resignation for the purpose of retirement as of April 1st, so there is significant savings there. As you know, as an older, more seasoned teacher retires, we bring in some new, younger teachers at a significantly lower cost and provide some savings on the budget. Native American tuition, we were able to increase the revenue on that side based on a thorough review that recently happened with Ms. Navis as well as Ms. Thomasina and Leslie Murray in the registration. They've gone through that entire roster to make sure we're picking up all kids and accounting for all. And we did notice that our numbers we had budgeted were a little bit on the lower side, so we did bump that up in order to meet what is actual.
So that is all based on enrollment,
Correct.
not an increase.
We had
in tuition.
I had 86 students from the reservation in there. We currently have 102.
Okay.
So that's why it's a significant increase on that. We did
Terry, I'm
finalize.
sorry.
Yep.
When does the Native American tuition number, when do we get that?
So we get it 3 times throughout the year. I get 25% in the fall. We get then 50% of the balance around February, March, and then we get final payment at the end of the school year.
But the tuition rate itself, which is set by
The
the
tuition
Senate
rate, I don't
falls,
receive
right?
usually until December.
Okay.
And that's on
historically
the
then-
prior years. So right now, I'm working off of prior years.
and
Next
historic-
December, we would reconcile this year and start billing off of the new year.
And historically, it doesn't go down?
Correct. We've seen slight
Stays the same or a slight increase?
Right.
Okay.
We did finalize our BOCES budget. There's a minor adjustment, a slight increase on that, as we were going through in all of our contracts and needs that we have with BOCES. We did increase the ERS reserve, and that was just to keep our levy under the 3%. As we've discussed in past meetings, adding the additional capital outlay would increase the levy. However, as administration, and I believe the board, we would like to keep at the number that we put out there back in February to the community, 2.474. So adding a little bit more reserves will help balance that out. We did increase the debt reserve allocation, and also to help that additional capital outlay project spending. So overall, you can see there was a significant increase to revenue side of the budget and a slight decrease to the expenditures to come to that $47 million.
Carrie, those two reserves, they have been like every audit they've been telling us we're funded appropriately.
We are funded well in those. The debt reserve has got to be used to pay off debt. We can't keep that lingering. But ERS, we are fairly healthy. We've been funding that reserve year over year, and we've had the 3 years worth of expense in there, which is what the controller recommends.
And then go back to capital outlay, and I asked 3 times, I need to write it down every time. What do we get back on that money?
The following year, we'll see our state aid, which is 76%. So we'll get 76% aidable in the following school year.
Only 90,000, or 90,000.
Thank you.
So as I said, the budget for the state was due April 1st. It is not an on-time budget. They're still in talks as of an update I received this afternoon. However, we are anticipating no change in the actual state aid numbers. Typically, we don't see a decrease in what the governor proposes. So what we have in the budget is what the governor has proposed. And given the significant increase in foundation aid, we don't think the House and Senate are proposing any increases on, school budgets and school aid coming forward. So we are comfortable with that. Capital outlay projects, like we said, would go possibly from 100 to 250. And with that 250,000, we would like to upgrade the bathrooms up at the high school boys and girls rooms.
Carrie, the change in the dollar amount doesn't come with any change in the restrictions on those projects?
We don't believe, we actually think they might become a little bit more lenient with that. That you might, there's talk that they would allow multiple buildings. Currently, you can only do the project in one building. There is talk and proposals that you can actually do the work across the district. So we think there might be a little bit more leniency in it, which would be great.
How many bathrooms?
So we're working with the architects as well as some vendors to get some cost estimates. Likely, we would love to do 3. The boys' room, girls' room, the auditorium, as well as the girls' room over by the nurse's office. The girls' room by the nurse's office being priority for us. And so it's really going to depend on price quotes. We do like to use state contract or BOCES contract for these works because it is a quick turnaround. And bids are coming in higher. Those are locked in at a fairly reasonable cost, so we do think we could get at least the one done and maybe facelift the other 2. So we're working through those projects now.
Can you just explain why the nurse's bathroom, why the nurse's office was a priority?
That's the oldest. That's an original bathroom. The other 2 did receive facelifts a couple years ago. Not sure exactly sure what timeline that was. But if you go in that bathroom, they are still pedestal sinks. They are not the other ones are freestanding sinks. It's old. It needs a new update. So the goal would be to make all bathrooms in symmetry with each other. Match what we have in the middle school as well as over by the cafeteria.
Perry, I know when we talked to the architect, we did walk through the other day that we have some concerns about some asbestos in there.
Correct. So I'm in conversation with Broderick on doing those samplings to get that going because they would also have to do a secret review for us prior to it. So that's all moving along.
Getting some of that out of the way.
Yes.
Good, great.
Yes.
Thanks.
So as I mentioned, the allowable tax levy, we previously had reported out to the board back in February, and we did report to the controller on March 1st that our levy limit was 2.474%, and that did include the $100,000 project. By adding in the 250, it does bump up our allowable levy limit to 2.834. However, we do recommend remaining at the 2.47, which is what I stated earlier, so using some reserve money to help keep us at what we have put out to the public throughout this time of presentations, and we're comfortable with that number where we're at. So what we have in here is we're maintaining our primary year programs, the middle year programs, and the diploma program. Adding the DCT teacher for Clayton Huey. As I mentioned, social studies and English at the high school, and maintaining our middle school band and chorus program, the 6th grade program that we started this year. It has been successful, so we are going to continue that. They have a extra class. There's teachers that teach an extra class for our 6th graders because of COVID. They did miss a lot of instructional time. So it's just to get those students up to speed to where they should be at this point. So we feel maintaining that extra class 1 year, it would support that program immensely.
I just want to be clear, it's not that the kids in 6th grade didn't have band prior, they're a separate band right now to.
Correct.
to-
Correct, yes.
So Perry, this would just be 1 year?
This is now year 2 going into, we're evaluating it year after year. Yep. We do have increased security and safety measures. We are going to contract with the safety officer from BOCES. It is somebody to make sure that within the buildings and grounds area, we are compliant with OSHA and some safety guidelines and training for our custodial staff. We are adding a 4-hour guard at Clayton Huey, where we're seeing that we do need somebody during the recess periods at most. So we will be adding that position in. Adding scholarship at the high school, and that is more of the ID badges for the students, another security layer at that high school level that the Emergency Preparedness Committee has been talking about for quite some time. And we feel like this is something that could really secure that building a little bit more, as well as help identify who's a student and who's not.
Do they get scanned coming in the building?
They would be, yeah. So we do have scholarship coming to our next Emergency Preparedness Committee to present the program and how it works and how we could utilize it best.
And they're going to also explain that this program, we're hoping if down the line we want to add other security measures. This
To tie it all in, to marry it, yeah.
That was just the middle school, high school?
This was right, we're phasing it just into the high school for right now.
Okay.
It does tend to be hard for the middle schoolers to maintain carrying ID badges, so most districts do it only at high schools. But certainly, once we get it up running and successful, we can certainly look at pushing it down.
So we would staff the doors,
Correct.
and as the children came in, their badges would be scanned.
Correct.
And when else would they need to scan their badges?
Those would really be the other times is for the incoming, anytime that they're arriving, so that way we know if they were late, if they're supposed to be there, if they're suspended and not supposed to be on grounds. There are times where you can use that program for athletic events. I know my personal district that I live in, they do use it for that purpose. There's guards with the computer at the entrance, and if you're a student, you're scanning, so that way the security guards know if those students are allowed to be on campus, if they're allowed to be at those games. So there's plenty of options and opportunities.
Okay.
We also, as you recall, did hire a security director this year using CURSA funding. However, that individual did just recently resign. This past Friday was his last day, so we are working through different measures and evaluating how that position is going to look going forward into the next school year. We do have a contingency placement for students with special needs. This school year, we saw a significant increase in students needing special needs. So we do feel that it is really prudent for us to start budgeting for those additional students that could be moving into district or get classified as they move up in program, throughout the year. And we also have the Chromebook replacements through BOCES Police Program that we plan to continue year after year, and that's replacing out some of the older Chromebooks as they only have about a 3 to 4 year lifespan. So we need to start getting in that program of replacing those out.
Karen, going back to the security director thing, what's our plan? Do we have something like just restructuring?
So for this year, we will be proposing at the next meeting to have one of our current guards receive a stipend to oversee the scheduling and the staff as a whole under my direction. So I'll continue working with them. When we had a little intermission between Mr. Townsend and hiring the director, I was handling a lot of that with some assistance from the guards. That scheduling will now fall solely on that person, take that off my plate and make sure that we're covered for all games, practices, as well as in-house.
So we could be using the money elsewhere to do different things.
Not necessarily in security.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be security if you chose to direct that.
Right, so CURSA requires it to be somewhat COVID related, anything with relation to mental health, disciplines, anything that you can tie to the results of COVID.
So it would be any staffing.
Any staffing, pretty much, yes. We've used it for mental health staff, for social workers. That's the CURSA, then the ARP money we've used for reading, EML, and that type of stuff. So there's a lot of flexibility within there to help us out.
So that position isn't necessarily tied to the contract for security?
No, that is a standalone position.
Okay, we just have a contract for the armed guards, correct? Or
Correct.
in-house or
Yes.
just arms?
So there is possibility to rethink what we do in that position structure.
So you'll be back to us on that?
Yes.
We're evaluating, come up with a plan for what we think would be best.
So just again, the capital outlay, this year we did the water fountains and the exhaust fans, which are now complete and they are up and running. The kindergarten exhaust fans will be done over the April break, and then those projects will get closed out. Again, next year we're looking to do the 3 bathrooms. We also have general fund improvements in there. We have the resurfacing of the Clayton Huey gym floor, some fence repairs that need to get done district-wide, pulling out the abandoned fuel and water storage tanks, that happens to be here in district office, as well as adding some signage to all buildings that, really make us stand out as an international baccalaureate school.
Carrie, one of the things too, just on that,
Yes,
it's not on there, some of the projects that you just completed, these old water fountains are up and running now?
Yes.
I saw that they're the water
Yes.
fountains,
Yep.
they're all
they're all looking good.
great.
So this is just a quick fund balance update. As we report to the state the adopted budget on the property tax report card, we also have to report to them what our fund balance is our projected fund balance is as of March 31st. So just sharing this with the board, these are estimates, they're unaudited, these are numbers that we work through monthly. But for right now, we're not really seeing too much of a change. The Evolar, we will see a decrease because we do have retirees that are going out, and we don't budget for those expenses, they come straight out of that reserve. The retirement contribution, we had utilized $200,000 this school year to pay our bill. The liability reserve, you see an increase there. That's because by law, we pulled some money out to purchase Chromebooks during COVID, and we do need to pay that back over the 5-year time. So we're continually putting in the $40,000.
What does GML stand for?
General municipal law, sorry.
Okay.
Unassigned fund balance, we do project that it will land at 4%. The assigned fund balance will go down by the $100,000 because as per the board goal, we're reducing reliance on that. And then the possible capital reserve, pending approval by the community, we anticipate we will be able to fund that reserve somewhere within the range of $150,000 to $250,000.
And that's based on surplus that we have from the
Correct,
towns.
that would only be any surplus above the 4%.
And you're anticipating that we're going to have surplus in that neighborhood to fund it? Okay.
So our next meeting is next Wednesday, a week from tonight. That's where our plan to adopt the budget as well as the property tax report card. And then May 4th is the annual budget hearing, which will be held up at the auditorium.
So we have a pretty solid spending plan. Not going to see too many changes between now and next week. We don't anticipate the state budget
any.
giving us any more money.
Correct.
The only thing is, if the funds for the security director is reallocated, that's going to come up next week.
Correct.
Right.
As we
And
work
that's
through
due
that.
to the timeliness of the resignation.
Yes.
Okay.
Carrie, can you remind me, you probably had it on the presentation, what's the budget increase relative?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's about just over 7%. And the reason for that high increase, which I do have that set for next week to go into that a little bit more detail for you. But the reason for that, we did receive a significant increase in foundation aid, over $2 million. So that's where a lot of it's coming from. And then the expenses that are offsetting that $2 million is health insurance that went up 12%, as well as our students with special needs. Some of those costs have risen exponentially from what we had in the original budget. So in addition, transportation, we have expired contract, and we are going into now CPI increases for that contract. So we are seeing significant increases there. So TRS rate did go up, ERS not so much, it did see an increase, but a normal increase. But those are some of the main categories that we're seeing. A lot of those changes eat up that $2 million increase from foundation aid, which is why all the other revenues are helping us to pay off all the other contractual obligations we have.
Okay, so how do we reconcile that with the board goal of 3% year over year?
As a not met.
Okay.
But it's not met as a result of, and it's an anomaly. We're receiving significant, because we're gonna get that, we're seeing that money.
If we choose to do that next year, we will be.
Well, next year we'll
Because
have to
we have
re-examine our board
confusion.
goal,
Right.
because and we'll have to account our
Take
board
this into
goal for the
consideration.
confusion of.
It is a conversation.
I was going to
Sorry.
ask that.
And in 2 years, we'll likely see a smaller budget, significantly
Correct, because then we'll
smaller
start
budget.
leveling off with our revenue. Yes,
So we have to keep that in mind.
yes. Yep. And that will work through as we do long-range projections each year as I update the long-range projections. And then we'll, go 4 years out to see where that starts landing. No problem. Any other questions?
Any from the general public? No. Sean, Mr. Spiller left, okay. That brings us to the end, correct? Yep. So motion to adjourn, and then we do need to go back into executive session. We will not be taking any action going from now, so I'm just moving right into executive. No, adjourn, you didn't move it.
No, you just motioned to go into executive session.
Okay. But when we come out of exec, we will not be taking any action at all. Yeah. So a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of which is to discuss contract negotiations with professionals. Motion. Second. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes, motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Bill, are we still recording?